She's an Emmy-winning journalist from the White House to war zones, telling all sides of the story. This is the Rita Cosby Show.
Let me get this straight. The CDC is saying that there is a big risk in mass transit and other locations, so we're going to appeal this judge's ruling. And we're saying that COVID is still a problem. They're also asking for COVID funds on Capitol Hill. So they're saying there is a threat. And then at the same time, the CDC is saying it's okay to lift Title 42 at the U.S. border. Can you say hypocrisy? I mean, to me, that is so outrageous. Think about that. It's dangerous for Americans, many of whom are vaccinated, to be sitting on a plane, or sitting on a bus or sitting, elsewhere, and they need more funds for COVID. But yet there seems to have been zero COVID at the U.S. southern border. And of course, we know from many of the past reports that the amount of COVID positivity coming in from migrants to the United States has been much higher than the American population. And yet this CDC and this administration turns a blind eye every time when it comes to a border issue because they want open borders. Well, joining us now to talk about this and also a bombshell report that they have on Just the News is great investigative journalist John Solomon. John, great to have you back here on the show, my friend.
Yeah, good to be with you, Rita.
Now, I want to first start with your big news. You've got some big scoop about the Biden administration being ordered by the court, right, to continue the Remain in Mexico policy.
That's right.
They tried to change it. The court came in and said no. Explain to everybody what that's supposed to do and if they're really enforcing it.
Well, that's it. That was our question, which is you talk to the Biden administration and say, oh, we're complying with the court rules. We're complying with it. So we dug in and we found out that out of the 221,000 illegal migrants that were encountered at the border this past month in March, so that's one of the largest records in American history, a total of 199 were put into the Remain in Mexico program. That is less than 0.1%. They are not.
Wait. I got to go back at you. Wait a minute. 221,000. Again, that was a record, John. And you're telling me less than 200 actually were kept in Mexico adhering to the judge's policy.
That's right. That's one less than 0.1%. They're thumbing their nose at not only a federal district court, but at a federal appeals court, and the United States Supreme Court refused to impose an injunction saying you can stop this. They would not allow them to do it. So they've been ordered at all levels of the federal judiciary to enforce this program while this case is working its way to the Supreme Court. In fact, there's arguments next Tuesday before the Supreme Court, and the administration has been thumbing its nose at the prior orders, saying we're just not going to do this. We'll do a couple for token, and that's it. When you process 199 out of 221,000 people, you're not complying with the court's orders at all. I talked to tonight with the Texas Attorney General. He is the man whose lawsuit forced the administration to keep complying with the Remain in Mexico process. He says, listen, I think we're heading towards a constitutional crisis. There's a possibility that the Supreme Court is going to rule this program is still constitutional. Remember, the Supreme Court ruled this once before when Trump was president, that this was a lawful program. If they do that again and the Biden administration doesn't continue enforcing the law despite being ordered to do so by the Supreme Court, we're going to have a constitutional crisis. It's a pretty remarkable moment that we're seeing. The administration not only is dealing with issues of incompetence and bad messaging, it's dealing with an outright defiance of court orders.
So what can be done? Because this is shocking, John, that they're not even following a federal court order. Isn't there something that the courts can do in saying, listen, you're not following our orders, you're not following our instructions?
There would be two. There's a couple options. The first, obviously, is the plaintiffs, the state's attorneys general, who went to court to get this regulation enforced, could seek a contempt ruling. They could seek to have the president or the Homeland Security Secretary or the head of the Custom Border Protection Agency held in contempt. And there's all sorts of penalties, as you know, from daily fines to imprisonment for people who are held in contempt. Another thing that some Republicans talk about, again, I don't know if their leaderships are on board, but there are some Republicans who strongly feel that the outright refusal to enforce laws that are on the books, that are clearly the will of Congress, the letter of the law of the land, that maybe impeachment is warranted. And you see a lot of people talking about maybe impeaching Homeland Security Secretary Mayorkas next year if Republicans get the House back. So those are two avenues that would put the Biden administration under a lot more duress and pressure. But, you know, it is a remarkable thing that this president promised us clear talk. He promised us competence and less drama. We have more drama, we have less clear talk, and we have less competence than we had for a very long time. And that's why our world is so much aflame right now. This White House has been unable to bring calm or common sense or competency to much of what it's dealt with in the last year.
And it also seems a lot of rules for thee, but not for me. You know, I mean, when a court orders you, you know, that's a really serious issue, as you know, John, and yet they're thumbing their nose. Hopefully any court, you would think, would say, wait a minute, you know, judges don't like to have their orders unobeyed.
Right. Yeah, no, listen, this is serious stuff, and this goes to what sort of rule of law, what sort of constitutional republic we're going to be. In the Democrats' mind right now, they don't see great hope in these institutions. That's why they wanted to add to the Supreme Court and tip the balance from 9 justices to something larger. It's why they have, you know, gone to court and tried to stop voter ID. They're trying to attack the institutions whose rules are not in their favor. And when they lose, right now, they're not showing a direct compliance with these rulings. I think that's what jumped out about the Remain in Mexico policy. It's very hard to get the numbers, but we got them. And, you know, they're pretty shockingly low. And I think a lot of people are going to have to ask themselves, after the Supreme Court hearing next Tuesday, let's suppose the Supreme Court rules quickly, will the President of the United States abide by the United States Supreme Court ruling? I don't know. We'll have to find out.
When is that going before the Supreme Court, John? When next week?
Next Tuesday, the Texas Attorney General, Missouri Attorney General, and their lawyers will be arguing the case in favor of getting the law enforced, and the Biden administration will be arguing against it. Most people who are looking at this case think that the Biden administration will lose because the court has tipped its hand on two ideas. First, it ruled once before this program was appropriate when President Trump was in charge. And two, they turned down a injunction. When you turn down a preliminary injunction, it means that the chance of them winning the issue is low, and that's one of the standards the court says. So the court has kind of tipped its hand that it's probably going to affirm this regulation again, and that's going to put the Biden administration in a very difficult spot.
It sure is, and I'm sure that hopefully the Texas Attorney General and Missouri Attorney General are aware of these very low numbers in the Remain in Mexico, because any judge is going to go, wait a minute, this is not what was promised to us. This is not what we had instructed. And that certainly is not going to help the case. Before I let you go, John Solomon, of course, with this great scoop here of what is actually happening at the border. It's like salting the wound, John. This is coming, of course, as Title 42 is about to be lifted on May 23rd. What do you make of the fact that there is such a hypocrisy? Tonight, the Justice Department is appealing the order voiding the travel mask mandate. So in other words, saying that the mask mandate should be in place on mass transit, that COVID is still a big issue. They're also saying that they're looking for COVID funds on Capitol Hill, all that stuff, as you know. At the same time, they're saying, well, there's not a COVID concern on the U.S.-Mexico border. I mean, so many of these people are sleeping under a bridge. I mean, talk about the health conditions that they're unfortunately having to go through even. You know, I'm having sympathy on these people who've gone these difficult routes, but they're not necessarily coming in with low infection rates as we've seen in the past. For some reason, there's no COVID on the border, John.
Yeah, listen, there is an amazing story that we broke about a week ago that very few people have paid attention to. It was a Department of Homeland Security Inspector General report, and here's what it said. In the first 6 months of the border surge, between April and September of 2021, when Joe Biden says he was dealing with the surge, there were two amazing things that happened. First, nearly all of the legal migrants that were allowed into the country and trafficked to the country, nearly all of them were not tested for COVID, even though we were being told they were being tested for COVID. The IG found that they did not, and the IG declared that the Biden administration created a public health hazard by doing that. They put public health at risk by doing that. The second thing they did is they rented $17 million of hotel rooms, claiming they were putting the illegal migrants in these hotels. Some of those were rented at $300 a night. Not many of us get to sleep in a $300 a night hotel. None of those rooms were used. $17 million of taxpayer money wasted. You hear that, and then you say, okay, they're going to make me go on that plane tomorrow and put that mask on, but those illegal immigrants are going to come in without a test, without a mask, without any requirements. Where is the system fair? How is it equal under the law? And I think a lot of people are grappling with that very serious question that this administration seems to have two rules for people.
Absolutely. The double standard is incredible. John Solomon, always great reporting. And again, everybody can get more details about all this on, of course, Just the News, and also all of John's social media, too, as well. John Solomon, thank you so much.
Thanks, my friend Rita. Have a good night.
You know, if I'm a judge, I go, okay, administration, explain to me how people who are sleeping in some of the most difficult conditions with, very little hygiene, very often little food, very tough conditions, that those people don't have any health issues whatsoever that they could potentially be bringing into the United States. But an American, well, they definitely have an issue if they're sitting next to somebody on a plane, another American. I would like to know on those secret migrant flights, do they have to mask up? I bet you they probably don't have to mask up on those either. I mean, this is just crazy. Take a listen. This is author Matt Contietti, and he said this messaging and these issues by the Biden administration are going to be a doomsday message for Democrats in November.
The thread that unites all of these challenges is competence, or in the case of the Biden administration, incompetence. It began with the border last year. It carried through the Afghanistan disaster. It has carried through the inflation. And now we see renewed crisis on the border. And we see the inability of the Biden administration to get its message straight on the relieving the mask mandate. It's that incompetence that's going to dog this administration through the election in November.
Yeah, it sure is. Don't you think people are going to go, oh, this just doesn't make sense? We had on the show last week Rob Astorino, Westchester County executive, former Westchester County executive, who is now running for New York governor. And Rob is the guy who blew the lid on those secret migrant flights. And I loved his line because he said to all of us, he thinks November is going to be, quote, the revenge of the normal people, because he said normal people have just had it up to here. It just takes common sense to say there's no COVID at the border. But boy, you got to worry if you're sitting on a flight, or you get sitting on a train, or you're on a bus. Boy, you have to worry there. But if you're crammed, thousands of you under a bridge, in Mexico or on the Texas side or wherever you are, no health issues there. That just defies logic, and it is such an insult to our common sense. 1-800-848-9222. Let's go to Jeffrey on line one. Jeffrey, your thoughts about this? This is amazing.
Sorry, I have to take you off speaker there. I'm sorry about that, Rita.
All right. Hey, Jeff, take your time. You're only on a national radio show, but go ahead.
I know. Good. Very nice to speak with you again. Here's the deal. I mean, if you look back and you see how many things that they lied about. Rita, we were sterilizing our mail, for crying out loud. You know what I'm saying?
You're right.
So many things.
You're right. Yeah, it was like, by the way, I kept, I'm sure, did you, Jeffrey? I kept my mail outside my home door. I kept it there for sometimes a week or two, and my boots, my clothes, everything. It was like I was living like I was in one of those sci-fi movies,
Right. I mean, I walked into a grocery store at the very beginning of this thing, okay? There's a lady. She has her jeans stuffed into plastic bags, which are then stuffed into her shoes, tied tightly. She has rubber gloves on. She has full, it was a painter's type goggles, not ski goggles, but a painter's type goggles. She's fully masked, gloves on, everything, and she's touching every single orange on the rack. Lady, if you have something, Now we're all going to get it because we didn't know at the time. I mean, we had to go with what they were telling us at the time. But the more you looked at it, the more you saw it made no sense. And then if you questioned it, you were accused of being crazy.
Absolutely. And now look at the contrast that I'm bringing up, Jeffrey. I mean, it is stunning that they're using the issue of COVID to justify why they want to continue having it on mass transit. But listen to the double standard that at the border, there's no issue, and they're going to lift Title 42 there. It's the same CDC. Boy, are they political. They're supposed to be based on the facts. Remember, based on science, like Fauci was promising. Boy, are they based on politics and not on facts and science. We know now that fentanyl is such a huge problem in America. It is the leading cause of death for 18 to 45-year-olds. And now authorities at the border were saying today that they are seeing a trend, a very disturbing trend, that fentanyl is now becoming a huge cause of death for people as young as 13 years old because they're getting what they think are legitimate opioids. They turned out to be laced with fentanyl coming in through that southern border via China and other countries, and it is killing them. Take a listen to this name, basically the staggering number. This is from Derek Maltz, former DEA agent, talking about the amount of deaths that are taking place in America every day from the deadly drug fentanyl.
Keep in mind, the CDC just released the most recent statistics through November of 2021, 12-year period, 106,854 dead Americans. And that's 293 a day.
293 are dying a day, being killed from fentanyl. And this administration is still planning to lift Title 42, saying there's no health issue. People like Derek Maltz and others. And I want to hear your thoughts tonight on the Rita Cosby Show on this, because when you hear these numbers, why can't they say fentanyl is the reason why you got to keep Title 42 in place? If you don't want to say COVID, even though you're happy to be pushing for the mask mandate, because the DEA is saying, you know what, fentanyl is a health crisis. It's an emergency. It's urgent. That is a huge issue, too. So why not use that reason to keep Title 42 in place? I would say 293 dead Americans every day from a drug that's coming through illegally on our southern border could absolutely be considered a health risk. It's not even a health risk, it's a health catastrophe. And yet this administration seems to be so eager to want to lift Title 42, which was in place over COVID. But Derek Maltz and people are saying, use fentanyl as the reason. Keep it in place. Do anything you can to protect our U.S. southern border and especially be able to protect our Americans. But yet, the mainstream media, and particularly the left-stream media, seems so intent on criticizing anybody that is trying to go against the norm. In this particular case, go against the administration's norm. The administration is saying they want a travel mask mandate in place for Americans, but that border with tons of fentanyl coming through, so much so that they seized $10 million worth, or 10 million, it would kill 10 million people. I mean, that is a staggering amount, but that's not enough to close the border. And instead, the media isn't attacking the people who are bringing the fentanyl in. They're not attacking the coyotes that are bringing the illegal immigrants in by the hundreds of thousands and predicted to be up to 3 million potentially this year with Title 42 about to be lifted soon. No, they're not going after them. They are spending their time in the last few days going after the judge. This is the Trump-appointed judge. And that's why, because it was a Trump-appointed judge, this judge who said, well, there shouldn't be a mask mandate on mass transportation in America, they're going after the judge. They're not going after the cartels. They are blasting the judge because the judge is a Trump-appointed judge, and the judge again said that this mandate shouldn't stay in place. So you would think, while we're talking about the fact that fentanyl that could kill up to 10 million Americans is a huge issue, and that is an astronomical issue and a very serious issue. They're spending their time criticizing the judge because they're saying the judge was too young or the judge was appointed by President Trump. Talk about just a hypocrisy. To me, this is so outrageous. Listen, this is Joy Reid of MSNBC criticizing the judge, saying she's not worthy to be making any decisions.
And now because this judge, who was rated unqualified, like she was an intern like 6 years ago, now she's a federal judge. She got on at 33 years of age, Trump's youngest and probably worst appointment. She basically is one of those people who's tired of wearing a mask and ruled as such. I don't see anything in just the reading through what she says. This is part of her ruling. This is her genius ruling. Wearing a mask cleans nothing. The mask's only about cleaning. At most, it traps virus droplets, but it neither sanitizes the person wearing the mask nor sanitizes the conveyance. This is a lady who's never tried a case in court. Her only trial experience was as an intern when she was in college. The ABA says she's not. For her to by herself be able to say no mask mandate to me is outrageous.
And then listen to her colleague, Lawrence O'Donnell, who also hosts a show there on MSNBC. He also went after the judge, not the fentanyl, not the coyotes, not the open border. He went after the judge.
A 33-year-old nominee to the federal bench who never set foot in a courtroom as a lawyer suddenly becomes a public health expert today. And no more masks required on most airlines. Some airlines have the right to maintain that rule if they want to. And we all personally have the right to wear masks, as I will be on any future airline flights, just when I was getting used to going back to the airport. This shows you once again the importance of having that power to appoint federal judges.
Wow. To me, they are not talking about the danger of the southern border and the hypocrisy that at the southern border, this administration basically says no COVID there, don't worry about it. And this judge is saying, look, a lot of places are lifting it. And she should even say, based on your Title 42 lifting, I think under mass transportation, that would have been smart. The judge should have done that. But they don't want to have anything to do with someone who was appointed by President Trump. And that's what this is all about. And shame on them for not focusing on the deadly serious issue of fentanyl and illegal immigrants. And we talked about last night on the show the stunning numbers of dozens of people that are on the terrorist watch list that have crossed our border. They are really missing the mark. Let's go to your calls, everybody. 1-800-848-9222. 1-800-848-9222. Let's go to Dom in Minnesota on line 5. Dom, your thoughts.
Yeah, Rita, I think two people that are very critical to solving a lot of our current problems, not the least of which is the border crisis. One is Elon Musk, if he follows through on making Twitter a free speech platform. The other is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who should be encouraged to freely exercise her First Amendment rights on Twitter. And to top it all, we start a new Twitter handle to explode new membership, and it should be called @THFRN, which stands for the Hunt for Red November, starring Musk and Cortez, and special guest appearance by Judge Catherine.
What about wasn't it Sean Connery who was in the first one? See, do I know my movies there, Dom, or what?
Yeah, my Musk is Sean Connery now, 007.
That's right. Did you know that, by the way, Miss Cortez was the 10th presidential pick for 2024? Oh, my goodness. What I do know is that Kamala Harris was number 3 behind Pete Buttigieg, who was, a mayor up until it seems like a few days ago, basically. Boy, what a mess. Dom, but I like your point because I do think it is going to be a battle in November, and I think there's going to be a rude awakening for Democrats with a lot of these crazy policies and these unbelievable double standards and the focus that they're focused on anything that's Trump. But let's just ignore these huge fentanyl numbers. Let's just ignore COVID at the border. I mean, it is so shocking that they are living in such an alternate universe and that their standards, borders wide open, but you know what? Got to mask up on a plane. How dare you, average American, law-abiding American citizen? I mean, it is shameful. Dom, thank you. I always love your calls. Let's go to Sherilyn in Canada on line 6. Go ahead, Sherilyn.
Hi, Rita. Absolutely love your show. Listen to it every night.
Thank you.
You are fantastic. The reason I called is when you were talking earlier about what they're not looking at coming across the border. I moved down to the United States and lived there for 31 years. But to get there, I had 7 months of paperwork. I had to get my fingerprints taken to be sure I wasn't a criminal. I had to have a chest x-ray, and I had to see an American doctor on the Canadian side to be sure I had no health issues before I was even allowed to move to the States.
Wow.
That's how they used to do it.
And don't you think, as much as obviously that was a hassle, that it's the right thing to do? What are your thoughts about the importance of that process, Sherilyn?
Well, absolutely. Absolutely. Because really at that time, of course, I was married to an American, so I was coming over, but at that time it was like Canada and the United States were almost like equals. There was just a border between us. And so I felt like if they're that careful coming that way, then Canadians were careful coming this way. But yeah, I had nothing wrong with it. I had never been a criminal, but I had to go into the police department, get all fingered up, everything. I mean, it was like quite a ritual to move to the United States.
You know what's interesting, Sherilyn? I just saw it was a new Quinnipiac poll where it shows that Hispanics have a very low approval rating of President Biden. And these are Hispanics who are already here in this country, who are legal citizens. And to me, I think when they know how much work it was for them to come to this country, that they also resent people who just kind of come across the border illegally. You know, because, it's like if you came through the right way like you did, and my parents too, my parents became American citizens. And in fact, it took them 5 years from when they came back then. I mean, we're talking years ago. It took them 5 years until they became American citizens, but they were so proud of it and did a lot of work. They had to learn the language. They had to take the test. They had to do all those things, but never regretted it. And I think people who go through those steps like you do, and my parents did, and many others, they resent the people who do it illegally.
I love the United States. I mean, I came back to Canada to get remarried again, but I absolutely love the United States. I have a son that lives in Chillicothe, Illinois, and another son that lives in Warner Robins, Georgia. So my family's down that way too. So
very good, very good. And by the way, I used to host years ago at WBTV in Charlotte. And the sportscaster was from Warner Robins, Georgia. So I know exactly where that is.
And by the way, Rita, my grandson is in the United States Air Force.
Oh, my God. Bravo, bravo, bravo to your grandson. How beautiful to hear that. Thank you very much. And thank you for the great message about what America really, really represents to so many people. Sherilyn, thank you. Let's go to Jennifer in Boston on line 5. Jen, your thoughts about this?
Hi, Rita. Thank you for being such a passionate, strong-minded person and so articulate. If I could, on the whole illegal immigration thing, let this not be lost, especially on any independent voter or an old-school Democrat. Think of who you're voting for the next time voting comes up, whether it's the midterms or in 24. In New York City, you had they voted there to give free college tuition to illegal aliens, but not to Gold Star family members. In the White House, there was Donald Trump had put in an office for angel families who are victims of illegal alien crime, losing loved ones, which are on average 150 Americans are killed a day by illegal aliens in this country. And when almost one of the first things that Biden did when he got in there is he let that office, he kicked them out, these angel family members. They were mostly mothers of children who were killed by illegal aliens, and he replaced it with an office where illegal aliens could air their grievances.
Oh, my goodness. So he basically turned it around to make, to highlight those who are crossing illegally.
And it just shows you where their allegiances are. Look how outraged they were, Rita, at any supposed mistreatment of illegals at the border, kids in cages, all that stuff, drinking out of toilet, which was all lies. But look what happened under Obama. We had veterans dying in waiting rooms, in parking lots. All the lies they put out about wait lists and everything, Rita, they cared more about people who have never lifted a finger for this country, in fact, broke into our country, than they did for anyone who's given their very all for this country. And people need to think about that when they vote. And it breaks my heart, it really does. This country is being given away by those who've done the least for it. And it hurts my heart. But thank you for hearing me, Rita.
No, and I hear your pain too. And I'm outraged too, because you're right. It's like we should be, first of all, you know how I feel about our veterans and everybody. By the way, after the break, we're going to have our Support Our Heroes segment that we do every night here on the show, which is one of my favorite segments where we honor the great men and women in the military and their families. But you're right. It's like the way they have treated the military. Think about also, even law enforcement, the people who didn't get the vaccines, they were treated like lepers. Doctors were treated like lepers. And yet, if you were coming through the southern border and still continuing to do so, come on in.